Hi, I'm Elizabeth Hamblet. I write about and make presentations on preparing students with disabilities for successful college transition. Today, I want to show you how to find the documentation requirements for when students register with the Disability Services Office. Now, this registration will happen after they have been admitted and they have enrolled at the university and they are ready to request accommodations. So I'm going to share my screen and walk you through how to find them. So I am going to choose for today, let's see, University, oops, got to spell it correctly, University of Massachusetts. Let's see, disability documentation. Oops. And I didn't spell it correctly, but Google knew what I was looking for. We're going to leave it in. So documentation for eligibility, disability services at UMass. That seems like a promising place to look. So specifically for this school, please keep in mind, you're going to hear a lot of different things about disability documentation. In the description of this video, I'm going to put a link to my website, Common Myths About Documentation. Much of what you've heard is not true. What's so important is you need to check the disability documentation guidelines for the specific school that the student will attend. Don't rely on what's happened for your friends and family members at other schools. Every school gets to decide what their documentation requirements are. All right, documentation for eligibility. Okay, so it took me right where I needed to go, so that's helpful. So you may want to put the word documentation into that search feature. And let's see, they take appropriate steps to determine qualifying disability statuses under the Americans with Disabilities Act with guidance from the Association on Higher Ed and Disability, known as AHEAD. Now, AHEAD is a professional organization. I belong to it. Just be aware that these are their suggested steps and that there's nothing in the law that specifically talks about documentation. As I said, that's why colleges really are allowed to choose their own documentation requirements. So here at UMass Amherst, they take three primary sources while screening applications: student self-report, observation and interaction when they meet with students. Their staff will make some decisions based on what they observe, and information from third parties. So in many cases, they say it will be necessary to consider documentation prepared by a qualified professional, and it will depend upon the type of impairment. So for instance, psychoeducational or neuropsychological evaluation for learning disabilities. They also note that there has to be sufficient evidence the applicant has a mental or physical impairment that substantially limits more than one life activity. And all you students can do is turn in their documentation and see what the office says about whether or not it views them as having that substantially limiting impairment. So you can have a look. Here's the URL if you want to check out specifically what UMass says. But one of the things I want to do, and I'm trying to keep the video brief, is show you some other things that you might see when you look. There are some schools that do their documentation in this way, and so that can be really helpful. It seems like there aren't very rigid requirements, for instance, for how old this third-party documentation can be or what needs to be in it. So I'm going to show you a different example now. And let me just make sure my screen sharing is doing what I want it to do. Yes, okay. So this is the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. My apologies for if I've mispronounced anything. So here are their documentation guidelines. Now notice they have an entire list of different kinds of documentation based on the kind of disability that the student has. So students have to submit documentation of their disability to request academic accommodations. Again, notice this office is called Accessibility Services, not Disability Services. So that's just a little note. And their quick reference suggested documentation elements are typed on letterhead, dated, identify what the disability is, describe the functional limitations, severity or progression if it's appropriate, and any medication side effects. But what's important about this, and this is why you have to check it for every school that your student is looking at, this one has very specific requirements. Now, there are general guidelines for everything, and that probably these are, similar across colleges as far as being based on somebody's current functioning. Again, it doesn't seem like they specify how many years old the documentation has to be or can't be older than. It says accommodations aren't intended to fundamentally alter the curriculum. That's about something else. But let's have a quick look. I'm going to start with learning disabilities because that's my area, and the majority of students at colleges, just looking at statistics, have learning disabilities. So I wanted to show you something because you may see these elements at a lot of different colleges. So there's some stuff about the law and how the evaluator should interpret things, that if it's based on discrepancy between ability and achievement on the basis of a single test score, it's not sufficient. Everybody's going to be different in the way that they approach this stuff. There are some phrases that they think signal that the student doesn't truly have a disability. Now, I want to show you this part, though. First, they're saying it has to have a DSM-4 or ICD code. And what those are, they come out of these diagnostic manuals. If your student has testing from your public school district, it's unlikely, it's possible, but that they will have this information. Please don't panic. Please don't rush out and get new testing. It's very likely that the college will accept this because they are familiar with the idea that school districts don't provide these codes. But before doing anything, call the office and ask them whether they will accept school district testing that doesn't have it. My guess is that they will say yes. Now, again, they say testing should be current. Now, here they say, and I stand corrected, that it means it has to have been conducted within the last 3 years prior to your request. Again, I think if testing is older than that, before arranging for anything new, students should contact this office and see whether they are more flexible than this indicates. It's possible that they may be. Testing must be comprehensive. There needs to be a diagnostic interview. Well, it's probable that if your student has been evaluated by the school district that doesn't have this, again, I don't think it's something to worry about. A complete psychoeducational or neuropsychological evaluation, aptitude, achievement, information processing. You're going to see these three things often clustered together if it's schools that require testing. But be aware that this one here, information processing, is typically not needed. It's rolled into the testing done for aptitude, and you do not need additional testing. So again, in the description here, I'm going to put a link to my website that talks about what to look for in these documentation requirements and explains a little bit more about these. Again, if your student has had testing by the school district of their aptitude or their cognitive ability and their academic skills, reading, writing, math, they don't need additional testing for this. So please don't run out and get testing until you check. But don't take my word for it. Please check with University of Texas at Rio Grande Valley. It should talk about their functional limitations, and it should include a history of current and past accommodations. It must be on official letterhead. Again, if it's your student's IEP that contains all of this information, it may not be on letterhead. It may just have, be on the form that the school provides. That will probably be fine. But the whole point of this is that you should be checking exactly what they require and asking questions. Do not assume that based on what you see here, there is no flexibility at all. Check it out, ask them questions, and that way, the sooner you do this, the sooner you'll know what students need. You can do this, and I suggest you do, as your student is adding schools to their list of schools to apply to, you can at least do some preliminary looking to see what they'll need. And if you find that all the schools that they are applying to require this kind of testing and you won't have it, you will have some time to get it. So, forewarned is forearmed. The sooner you check this out, the sooner you'll know. Now, really quickly, I just want to click back because that was learning disabilities. Let's see if I can navigate to it here. Nope. So let's see what else. So there's specific requirements for autism spectrum disorder, blind and low vision, deaf and hard of hearing, physical mobility, psychological. I think I've missed something here. TBIs, temporary brain injury, traumatic brain injury, sorry, and temporary disabilities, and ADHD. I'm going to keep this video short, but I just wanted to demonstrate for you what kinds of things you should be doing. Please check my website, LD Advisory, for lots of free information about this, and also see what I have on offer for my new book and my laminated guide and my on-demand detailed webinar about accommodations, but lots of free stuff on my site too. I hope you find it helpful.